New satellite imagery reveals what analysts believe is a full-scale replica of a U.S. Navy destroyer, that replica in China. It is apparently at a missile testing facility in remote northwestern China, and it's raising new questions about what exactly Beijing might be preparing for. CNN's Will Ripley takes a closer look at those images and what it might mean.
At first, it looks like any American warship at sea. Then you notice the sand. More than 1,000 miles from the nearest coastline, hundreds of miles from any major city, deep inside the western Chinese desert, what appears to be a full-scale mock-up of a U.S. Navy Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. Look at it side by side with the USS Fitzgerald. The resemblance is striking. Both are around 510 feet long. At the back, the helicopter flight deck, used to launch and recover naval helicopters. Next are the vertical launch systems, cells used to fire guided munitions like the Tomahawk cruise missile, heavily used in the conflict with Iran. This is the bridge and command area, where navigation, communications, and combat operations are controlled. At the front is the deck gun, used for surface targets, air threats, and shore bombardment. Together, the details suggest a carefully built, full-scale replica of one of America's main guided missile destroyers, workhorses of the U.S. Navy fleet, more than 70 sailing in oceans around the world. If conflict ever erupts over Taiwan, these destroyers would likely be among the first U.S. warships deployed. Han Su analyzes China's military for Taiwan's top defense research institute.
Why would China go through all the effort and expense to build this?
The Chinese try to prepare everything from A to Z.
The Chinese military has ballistic missiles that can attack from high angles and cruise missiles that can attack horizontally. So they're trying to combine both and enhance their anti-access and area denial capability.
He says they're trying to improve the accuracy of China's newest hypersonic anti-ship missiles displayed at Beijing's military parade last year. The 3D replica is covered with antennas designed to simulate the radar signature of an American warship, helping China detect, identify, and perhaps target the real thing. It's located in Xinjiang, the same area where the People's Liberation Army built 2D flat mock-ups of U.S. aircraft carriers and destroyers several years ago, even putting them on tracks, analysts say, to move at the speed of actual ships.
Have they ever built a 3D mock-up before?
It's first time.
Open source intelligence analyst Joseph Wen first spotted the mock-up when it was still under construction about a month ago.
I do think this is quite surprising. The scale of the construction is really massive.
What message are they trying to send by building this?
The message that they are sending is China is always preparing for war.
Under leader Xi Jinping, China has poured billions into modernizing its military, from aircraft carriers and nuclear weapons to artificial intelligence. The PLA has also long trained using mock-ups of everything, from U.S. military assets to Taiwan's presidential office. On China's tightly controlled social media, censors are allowing comments like these. The U.S. military's premier escort warships, long regarded as a source of pride, have now become designated targets for Chinese missiles. They are nothing more than targets sitting in the desert, waiting to be hit.
We've reached out to the Pentagon, the U.S. Pacific Fleet, and China's Defense Ministry. No response. But we do know China's military modernization continues on multiple fronts. We saw it just after the 4th of July when Beijing conducted that submarine-launched ballistic missile test into the Pacific, although missile tests are pretty routine for nuclear powers. What makes these desert mock-ups unusual is really their level of detail. You don't need a realistic 3D replica to simulate a warship's radar signature. That's why many believe these mock-ups may be doing two jobs at once, helping the PLA physically prepare for future fight, while also sending a psychological warning to anyone watching from above, especially the U.S.
Countries throughout the Asia-Pacific region are expressing their concern with China over a rare submarine-launched ballistic missile test. Australia's foreign minister calls it destabilizing to the region in the context of a rapid military buildup by China, which is lacking in the transparency and reassurance to intent that the region expects. A spokesperson for Taiwan's president says it highlights China's increasingly obvious ambitions for expansion in the Western Pacific. China claims the test was in accordance with international law and did not target any specific country or objective. It says the launch was part of routine military training and relevant nations were informed in advance.
China is using a historically significant date, the 89th anniversary of the Marco Polo Bridge incident, which marked the commencement of Japan's full invasion of China back in 1937, as the date on which to launch this missile. It coincides with the signing of the security pact between Australia and Fiji. And Australia has been playing a leading role in competing for influence in the South Pacific in the last few years. And that's been following pacts signed with Indonesia and with Papua New Guinea, as Australia looks to shore up its relationships in the region in what is becoming a hyper-competitive environment. The missile firing itself reflects China's ability and desire to consolidate the nuclear triad, if you like, the ability to defend China from attack or counterattack with its missiles from land, sea, and air. The submarine-launched missile is one that is clearly on the cutting edge of China's technological push, and that is largely what this is about. But this has pushed the legal boundaries to the limit. We know technically China has not breached any territorial exclusion zones, economic exclusion zones. It's operated technically within the law, but to the edge of the law. And of course, along the way, it's irritated everybody in between. So whether or not this is going to prove to be of benefit to China in the long run, when you irritate the neighbours and everybody starts getting worried about you, it certainly encourages countries like Fiji and others in the Pacific to look towards Australia and sometimes the United States, Japan, and elsewhere as well. So whether or not it's proving worthwhile for China to do this is up for debate.
So, Professor, you're suggesting this is in part a message in response to Australia and Fiji's deepening ties. You have just in the last day or so, the government in Manila announcing in the Philippines that it will be receiving destroyers from Japan, and that Japan and the Philippines have been deepening their own security cooperation. Of course, both of those countries are involved in territorial disputes and jockeying with China in the South China Sea, in the East Sea. Could these destroyers make much of a difference in some of these confrontations?
So they certainly add to the credibility of the Manila's response. They add evidence of Manila's resolve to push back on Chinese assertiveness. China has been increasingly pushing into the Philippines' exclusive economic zone and brooking no quarter in terms of making concessions to the Philippines. Of course, the previous president of the Philippines made significant concessions to China's demands, and what did it get in return? More pushiness from China. So it didn't really prove worthwhile in the long run, and that's resulted in the current president taking a more hardline position towards China and looking to bolster its connections with Japan and other like-minded countries like Australia. Japan and Australia, of course, traditionally being seen as the spokes in the US alliance network across the Pacific, linked to the hub being the United States. But now we're seeing more connection between those spokes between Australia, the United States, and of course the Philippines being a traditional ally of the United States as well. That alliance connection with the United States has also enabled a degree of interoperability of common practices, procedures, and techniques between these three countries and others. That has enabled the connection between them that has actually been accelerated by the fact that Chinese assertiveness is generating that blowback. So we're likely to see more of that as the Philippines continue to feel that pressure. The Japanese are very keen to see the Philippines acquire these vessels. Japan is building a replacement set of vessels. Australia is also buying Japanese vessels. So we're seeing this East Asia Indo-Pacific collaboration really very much in response to, what could be described as reasonably gratuitous pressure from China.